Hi guys, my name is Trinity, and if you are here to talk about books. Today I am compiling my spooky season TBR. So these are the books that I will be focusing on, or the books that I have been intrigued by. This is more an MBR than a TBR, but these are the books I'm really excited to get to for spooky season. If I don't read all of them, I don't read all of them. But this is part of the reason I haven't done TBRs lately, is because I've been a bit of a mood reader. So I have 20 books to talk about today. And like I said, this is going to be for all of spooky season, so through November. But I wanted to let you guys know what I've actually picked up for spooky season. First, though, I have to talk about the 3 books that I let my Twitter followers pick for me. Basically, I took a picture of my TBR cart. You guys have seen it, especially when I do book hauls. It's usually right behind me. And I said, okay, the 3 most mentioned books from this picture will be on my TBR for October. There were a lot of people who were like, October is spooky season. You should be reading spooky books. But that didn't count. I needed titles. So I had 3 books that won the poll. And the first, of course, would be Best Served Cold by Joe Abercrombie. I knew when I posted the picture and everyone saw this, this would be what got the vote. I knew it would be the top rated. I knew it would be the top picked, whatever. But I DNF'd First Law. I didn't like the way the second book was going. Found out how it ended. Realized I'd have been completely ticked off at how that ended. And so I was like, First Law is not for me. However, so many people have told me I will still love Best Served Cold because this is actually Joe Abercrombie's one plot-driven book. I know that this is a revenge story. I know that characters that we have been introduced to in First Law make an appearance in this book. But I'm very excited to actually pick this up because I really liked the blade itself. Didn't like how it ended. Again, it was becoming a trend with First Law that I wasn't going to like how the books ended. But very, very excited for this one. Next on the poll, I couldn't be more excited because whenever I kind of had like a little bit of a, I won't say meltdown, but kind of got overwhelmed, this was one of the books that I was thinking about when I was like, I'm not reading the books that I want to read. These fantasy series have been sitting on my shelves for at least a year and I'm not touching them. The Gutter Prayer by Gareth Hanrahan. I am so excited. This is urban fantasy written by a man, which I haven't read much of. I tend to read urban fantasy written by women, so I'm very intrigued by this. This has been blurbed by a lot of people that I already really like, and I've heard this is dark, atmospheric, and, you know, typical urban fantasy, you get like werewolves, witches, vampires. This is urban fantasy, but it centers around thieves. And you guys know how much Thieves and Assassins just gets to me. I love Thieves and Assassins. Those are some of my favorite stories. So people are shocked that I haven't read this yet. And I'm shocked I haven't read this yet. This and Priest of Bones. Probably those are the 2 that I'm like, why haven't I read these yet? Like, they're sitting right here and I haven't picked them up. But this won the vote. And now, kicking off my spooky season TBR with the 3rd book on the list, Devil in the Dark Water by Stuart Turton. Now, there were a couple people I knew when they saw this on my TBR cart, they were going to pick it. Even though Best Served Cold was on there, I knew that they were going to pick this book because they love the characters in this book. Now, I have read 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. Absolutely loved it. Love Stuart Turton's atmospheric writing. So I'm very excited to get back into that. I'm not a character-driven reader though. So I do kind of worry, and that's why I haven't picked this one up yet. But I know enough about this to know that this is probably going to give me the gothic feels that I want from like a mystery thriller. This is probably going to give me the dark atmosphere that I want from a horror, even though it is kind of mystery thriller horror-esque. Mystery thriller with speculative fiction elements in it. That's where I'm going with that. But I am dying to get into this and find out what I actually think of it because, again, I've heard nothing but great things about it and can't believe it's been sitting on my TBR cart for so long. So the rest of these I have kind of broken up into sections. First, I'm going to start with a young adult. I have 2 young adults that I do plan to read. The first of those being the book I just received from Owlcrate, and that would be The Depths by Nicole L'Esperange. And this is supposed to be a gothic horror set on a tropical island. I'm so intrigued by that. I've never read a gothic horror set on a tropical island before, and so the setting itself intrigues me, but the back of the book says, deep down underneath it all, the island's heart beats. And that's pretty much all I need to know about this, is that it's gothic horror set on a tropical island. I do know that there is some mystery and some romance in this book, but I don't need to know anything else. So for a book that has sat on my TBR for quite some time, I actually asked for this for Christmas like a couple of years ago. It was purchased for me then, and that would be Ghostwood Song by Erica Waters. Now, this is a book that I want to pick up in the fall because of the fall vibes. I know that this is, again, centered around a forest. Music is the magic that is utilized in this book. And it kind of has a Devil Went Down to Georgia vibe to the book. So I know there's a fiddle. I know there's necromancy involved. And I'm very, very excited to delve into this and see if I like it. Like I said, it's been on my TBR for 2 years. Also, pause here for just a second. You all know I'm also working on Exploding TBR. So I'm not going to talk about the books that I have talked about in the Reader Toss video. Those, obviously, I'm still trying to get through as quickly as I can. But this one should have probably been on the list, although I knew I wasn't going to get rid of it. I've just been waiting for the right time to read it. Next, I have 3 witchy books that I'm super excited to tackle. First of those being Hex Life. I have been really wanting to get into some short stories, so I picked this up very recently. And it has Kelly Armstrong, Theodora Goss, Rachel Kane, Sherilyn Kenyon, and so many authors that I already love. But I've been wanting to get into some short stories, kind of do what Leslie from the Nerdy Narrative does and reads just like a short story or 2 a week and make my way through the book that way. That way I'm getting just a little boost, a little story just to get me through the day, you know. And from what I heard, the audiobook of this is really good. So this might be something that I immersive read as well. All right, one that I've had on my TBR for a while, but again was waiting till fall to read because I love reading witchy books during the fall. Payback's a Witch by Alana Harper. Now, I know the next book in this series is out already. So if I read this and I absolutely love it, there's a good chance that I will pick the next book up as well. But this one, I read The Hex and I did not like it. So whenever I did my review of The Hex, one of my friends said, and it was Kayla from Crack Into a Good Book, she told me read this instead. Like, if I want the Hex vibes, but don't want like the pretty surface level writing and romance that we got in that book, pick this one up. So I'm very, very excited to it. I've heard this is cute and charming and just a lot of fun. So it says the witch is back and ready for revenge with a little help from her friends in this fresh sizzling rom-com by Alana Harper. And one of the things that I was intrigued by in the XX is enemies to lovers, and this also has enemies to lovers. But the way it was done in the XX was really poorly executed, so I'm hoping that this also picks up where that one did not. All right, one that I'm sure everyone's kind of been excited for me to read because it's been mentioned that everybody's ready for me to read it. That would be Her Majesty's Royal Coven. So yes, we have another witchy book. I'm very excited to get into this. I've heard nothing but great reviews for this book, and I am very intrigued by witches in government. That is pretty dang cool. I love it. They protect crown and country from evil and evil beings, evil entities. And so I'm very, very excited to see what this book has to offer. I have the Fairy Loot version of it. So autographed, and it has the wicked pink hardcover. But this one hit my radar hard the moment it hit my doorstep. Next, I have two books that I purchased from Book of the Month. And some of these are going to be Book of the Month picks because I have a tendency to pick mystery thrillers for my Book of the Month or whatever fantasy option that they have. But these two are magical realism, and I've heard that they're very atmospheric, which is what I want in the fall. And so I have A History of Wild Places by Shay Earnshaw. Now this is Shay Earnshaw's adult debut. So Travis Wren has an unusual talent for locating missing people. Hired by families as a last resort, he requires only one single object to find the person who has vanished. When he takes on the case of Maggie St. James, a well-known author of dark, macabre children's books, he is led to a place many believed only to be a legend. Known as Pastoral, this reclusive community was founded by like-minded people searching for a simpler way of life, but soon after Travis stumbles upon it, he disappears, just like Maggie St. James. It has kind of like an M. Night Shyamalan type of vibe, at least by the synopsis, and I dig that. I dig that. I really, really hope that I like this. I've heard mixed reviews on it though, but I have a tendency to like spooky magical realism, and I have a feeling that this is going to lean into the spookiness of the magical realism. Okay, next I have A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross. Again, I do believe that this is an adult debut by Rebecca Ross. But this one is about an island where girls are going missing. This main character that we have is a bard who gets sent to this island where these girls have gone missing. And on this island, there are like these elemental spirits. That's all I know of this book. And I haven't heard anybody talk about it, but having that magical, mysterious, supernatural element to this really, really made me want to push this to the fall, even though some of what we get is set on the sea or on an island. I still think we're going to get, well, one, we're going to get the confined space, the close quarters of the island, this closed off community, which I think lends to a great mystery. And again, mysteries are just fun to read in the fall. And on that note, I have 4 mysteries that I want to read. So I have In a Dark, Dark Wood by Ruth Ware. I've never read anything by Ruth Ware, and I've heard that this is a good place to start. One, because if you like this one, there are quite a few of her books that are much better, but this one is still good. However, my copy doesn't have a synopsis on the back. It says, who pulls a gun at a bachelorette party? The answers are unveiled with Gillian Flynn-style trickery. Read it on a dark, stormy night with all the lights on. So, Gillian Flynn, not my favorite author, but like I said, I've heard that this is a good place to start with Ruth Ware, so I'm looking forward to this quite a bit. I've heard that this is actually a movie as well, so if I read this, then I might be able to convince the husband to watch the movie. Next is a book that has been on my list for quite some time. It was on my Pop Sugar Challenge, but I've heard that this is one of Lucy Foley's best books, and that's The Guest List. And this is an isolated thriller that is centered around a wedding. And again, I think it's an island retreat that they are on. Yeah, an exclusive wedding on a remote Irish island. The bride, the plus one, the best man, the wedding planner, the bridesmaid, all have a secret, all have a motive, but only one is a murderer. I have read The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley and really, really enjoyed it. It was one of those that was kind of a quick thriller, but nothing that's going to knock your socks off. It's just a fun ride. But I've heard that this one is where it is as far as thrillers go. There's a lot of twists and turns in it. And the fact that it is a small group of people, I adore that. I really like that. One that I got from Book of the Month quite a while ago and just haven't picked it up yet. Again, last year I read through a lot of thrillers, but never made it to this one. And this was one of the ones I was most excited for. I don't know why I'm like this. But The Collective by Allison Galen. This is about a group of moms who take revenge. And one of their kids has been murdered and others have been bullied. And it says no killer goes unpunished. But moms taking justice into their own hands, I think this could be epic. All right, and an author I'm dying to read from, I'm dying to get into. I have 3 of her books on my list. Not this list, but on my TBR. But this one intrigues me so much. Simone St. James, The Broken Girls. Now, this is dual timeline. I don't always like that, but I've heard Simone St. James does dual timeline very, very well. And Simone St. James always adds speculative fiction elements into her mysteries. And so I'm very much looking forward to this one. This may be one of the books I'm most excited for, but also I'm scared to start because I want to love it so much. I think I have put a lot of pressure on this book to be good. Now this one, it's 1950 and 2014, but it centers around a haunted boarding school where things have happened in the past, but now the main character that is in our current timeline, she is investigating why her sister died. And she died around this boarding school. So she's investigating this boarding school and trying to figure out why it has such a haunted past. Sounds very, very good. So the rest of these are going to be horror. And I'm very, very excited to read more horror. I've already added another gothic horror to the list with The Depths. That came like 2 days ago. I'm pumped to have more horror in my life because, if you guys don't know, horror was the genre I used to read exclusively. So first I have The Beauty by Alia Whitley. I think that's how you say that name. Not sure. This is one that my friend Izzy sent to me and she was like, okay, this is weird. You're gonna like it. I hope you're gonna like it. And what I know of this is this civilization in this book, all of the women have died. And so all of the men get together to talk about what it was like to have women in their lives and things like that. But there is this forest where these women are supposedly buried, and strange things are happening in the forest and happening to the women's bodies that have been left behind. And so I'm very intrigued, very intrigued. If you guys can't tell, there's like mushrooms growing out of this woman's head. And it reminds me of the clickers from The Last of Us. And I mean, that is what their heads look like. But mushrooms have played a pretty prevalent role in horror lately. I don't know what the fear is surrounding mushrooms, but that they seem to be prolific in the horror genre. Okay, confession time. I misspoke when I introduced this book in my book haul. Those Across the River I just picked up. Christopher Buehlman, I said I hadn't read anything by this author. That is not what I meant. Black Tongue Thief is probably one of my favorite fantasy that I have read in the last few years. I meant I had never read any horror by him, but I've heard his horror is good. And so, with that cleared up, Those Across the River, I just purchased this, but whenever I was looking for things that I wanted to read during the fall, Hex Life, the one that was like the witchy short stories, and this I found at the buy sell trade. And we have what sounds like is going to be a very gothic story, because we're at an estate and the main character wants to write the history of his family's plantation. And I'm like, oh, this is giving me Southern Gothic vibes pretty dang hard. But, you know, it says small town vibes. There's an entity that starts to demand sacrifices. Yeah. I definitely think this is going to give me all of the Gothic vibes that I want. All right, next book that I've talked about a couple of times, A Headful of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. I actually mentioned this in a video, and then one of my friends read it. They read it before I did. I was like, okay, but they loved it. This is dealing with a girl with schizophrenia, or at least they think she has schizophrenia, and there's a chance that she might be possessed. So I really like the Gothic trope of mental instability, and are they mentally unstable, or is something more sinister going on? That's one of my favorite things that I see in Gothic horror a lot. So obviously this one called out to me. And I've heard very good things about Paul Tremblay, but I have never read anything by him. So this could be my introduction to a new favorite horror author. We shall see. I have read Foundry Side very recently, that series. I do have Locklands. I will be reading that this month. So Locklands. Very excited to wrap up that series. But I found a horror by Robert Jackson Bennett called Mr. Shivers. Nothing matters but where this ends, and it will end, regardless of the cost. And it will end in blood. That's what the back of the book says. So what I know of this is that it is set in the Great Depression, and it's a revenge story about a guy who is going after his daughter's killer. And like this right here kind of gives me the shivers because my husband works for the railroad. Let me tell you how many stories I've heard about people doing stuff like this. They don't end very pretty. But yes, I am excited to see what Robert Jackson Bennett does with a horror, because I also want to read City of Stairs, and I know that it's a fantasy that has horror elements in it. So up my alley to a T. Let's go. Next, I have a book you guys have probably all seen, and I know a few of you have been like, Trinity, why haven't you read this yet? We want you to read this. We've asked you to read this. That would be The Deep by Alma Katsu. Now, this is a horror about the Titanic. And there's a girl and a guy who worked on the Titanic together, but the girl that worked on the Titanic survived. The guy did not. And now she is working on another ship and sees this man on the ship, and she knows he's dead. So I'm very excited to see where this goes. But, you know, just like Devil in the Dark Water, we have a horror set on the sea. And I love the movie The Ghost Ship, so I'm very much looking forward to seeing if this is going to give me those similar types of vibes. Yes, very excited. Titanic used to be a buzzword for me. I haven't really picked up anything Titanic related since I started BookTube. So very much looking forward to this. And like the cover is super creepy. I don't know what's going on down here, but it's looking creepy. And the last book on the list is The Twisted Ones by T. Kingfisher. I said whenever I hauled this book, I don't know what it's about, but it is the T. Kingfisher book that gets recommended to me the most. I have had just about everybody that is a fan of horror recommend this to me. So I'm very excited to get into it. But this is about a girl alone in the woods who's cleaning out her grandmother's cabin, and it's her and her dog. Please tell me nothing happens to the dog. I don't know. I don't want to deal with that. I don't know if I can handle something happening to the dog. But I've heard this twists and turns, and with everything the girl finds out about her grandfather, they thought that he was mad, but now she's kind of reliving some of the stuff that he talked about. That with every reveal, it gets even more terrifying. So I'm very, very excited for this, like every other book on this list. All right, that's it for me today. Like, subscribe, do all the fun things, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.